Hi there, welcome to episode 5 in this series of record reviews with me, JVT, coming to you from a snowy and chilly New York City. This week we're going to talk about a couple of records from the early 80s, a couple of different styles of music, and a comeback record of sorts from the mid-90s. So our first one we're going to talk about today is this classic from 1981 by a band called The Models. Now, The Models from Melbourne, Australia. For me, The Models will always be a new wave band from the 80s. Now, The Models went on in the late 80s and early 90s to become quite a popular pop rock band. But this is a classic. This is the classic lineup of Sean Kelly and Andrew Duffield, the mainstays of the band. Sean Kelly being the main songwriter and singer. Buster Stiggs on drums and Mark Ferry on bass. Now Mark Ferry you'll know from SBS, well in Australia you'll know him from SBS's show Rock Wiz, where he plays the bass in the house band. Now this has got some classic songs: Two Cabs with a Toucan, Mano Action, Atlantic Romantic. They're produced by Tony Cohen, who you might know from The Birthday Party, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Tism. One track was actually produced, Atlantic Romantic, I think, Unfaithful to the Core, by Eddie Rayner from Split Enz fame. So if you can find this in a record store, Cut Lunch by The Models, if I didn't mention it before, Cut Lunch by The Models. Pick up a copy of there. I picked this up a few years back for $12, and the original price was $4.99. It's an EP, so you played at 45. There's 6 tracks on it. Cut Lunch by The Models. Great stuff. Now the next one from 1982 is the debut album from a guy from Detroit, Michigan called Marshall Crenshaw. This is his self-titled debut. 3-piece band playing with Marshall. His brother Robert on bass and Chris Donato on drums. Marshall's still making beautiful rock and roll music today. We saw him last year in New York City here. He's still fantastic. He has real rockabilly roots, 50s, 60s style, 50s, 60s style rock and roll credibility. Someday, Some Way is a real rockabilly type tune. We had a minor hit with it. This album was pretty embraced by FM radio here in America, New York City. Marshall Crenshaw, self-titled debut. Go and pick it up somewhere at a record store near you. Now the next one is like as I said, a comeback of sorts by legendary Beach Boy singer-songwriter extraordinaire Brian Wilson. Now Brian had his problems with his drugs, and he basically went out of the limelight for many years. Didn't tour with the band, and then he was in therapy, and we all know what happened with he and Eugene Landy. They had to sort of sever ties there. But Don Was the great producer who worked with the Stones. Still works with the Stones. Bob Dylan, B-52s, Bonnie Raitt, etc. Made this record with Brian. Got Brian to rework a lot of his classics like Do It Again, Warmth of the Sun, Till I Die, which is one of my favourite songs, and Caroline No. And his daughters Carney and Wendy actually reunited with him because he didn't have a lot to do with his daughters, who are good musicians in their own right. And they sung on Do It Again with him, which is a great track. And Don Was also made a documentary of the making of this album, and it's called I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, which is an old Beach Boys track, and quite apt for Brian, because Brian is a bloody genius. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, Brian Wilson. Hard to actually track down, but if you can get a copy, pick yourself up a copy of this. Great stuff. Now, as I spoke to you last week about podcasts, I'll speak to you again about podcasts. This one here is called the Little Dum Dum Club. A couple of stand-up comedians from Melbourne, Carl Chandler and Tommy Dassolo. They, much like the one I spoke to you about last week, I Love Green Guide Letters, they get their comedian friends in and sit around and chew the fat, and the hilarity ensues. Episodes can be downloaded on iTunes or on their website, littledumdumclub.com.au, I think. And if you're in Melbourne, they will be prolific in the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, late March, early April. So if you want to see a live podcast recorded or see the guys do their own stand-up, get yourself a ticket to that. That's about it for now. I'll see you in a week or so with some more recommendations and reviews. Bye.
Slow